Chapter 4. After I waited for about an hour, I decided to walk back toward town. I guess you could call it a gut instinct. Miss Devine was always on time, so her being late was making me a bit unsettled. I was walking cautiously because I knew that I was soon to be a person of great interest. As I got closer to the saloon, I could hear quite a ruckus going on upstairs. It was hard to make out what was being said, but I could hear, among others, the sheriff's voice hollering at the top of his lungs. I could then hear Mr. West's voice sounding a bit more like the voice of reason. "Now just hold on here a bit, Sheriff," Mr. West said. "This is just a small matter. Miss Devine, all we're asking for is that you tell us the whereabouts of that little guttersnipe." Miss Devine reared up, and in her most indignant voice, "I'm not gonna never, ever tell you where that boy is." "Oh, is that so?" said Mr. West. The sheriff jumped in. "Miss Devine, this is such a simple thing. We just want to talk to the boy." "Talk to the boy? You mean like you two vipers talked to me last night? The hell you will. You always had it in for that boy, and this time is no different. I know what you don't want anyone to know." "Oh, no, Miss Devine, I sure wish you hadn't said that." Mr. West answered that statement with a stern but quiet response. "Oh, well, then that's just too bad, Miss Devine. That is just something that you should not have known." There was a long pause of silence, and then Mr. West asked one more time, "Miss Devine, are you going to tell us that boy's whereabouts or not?" I couldn't hear, but I had the feeling that Miss Devine was backed into a corner. All of a sudden I heard a single gunshot, and then another too. My heart sank because I knew Miss Devine only had a single shooter. It became deathly quiet, and then I could see the sheriff and Mr. West emerge from the brothel door. "Now, you are my witness, Sheriff. That was plain and simple self-defense. I must say, it is a damn waste of a good woman." "Well, I was looking forward to many more rides, if you catch my drift." I could feel my blood boiling with an overwhelming hate for these men. I started to walk towards the stairs in a rage of anger, and just before they broke the turn in the stairs, I slipped underneath where I used to lay my head. I could hear their footsteps pass over me. The stairway was built just as such that if you didn't walk around and look in, you'd never know I was there. Mr. West said to the sheriff, "Find that boy. I don't want you resting until you do." "Yes, sir, Mr. West, you can count on me." The men walked around the corner out of sight. When I was sure that they were out of view, I crept up the stairs to the brothel door. I looked and I could see some feet by the side of the bed. I was scared to walk in, but inched my way forward. As I moved closer, I could see an ever so slight movement in Miss Devine's foot. I then lunged over to her side. "Miss Devine! Miss Devine!" I called out. Miss Devine was bleeding badly from her chest and stomach area. I started crying loudly. Miss Devine put her hand on mine. "Oh, Miss Devine, this is all my fault." Miss Devine patted my hand and squeezed a little tighter. In a labored, whispering voice, "You listen to me, Chance. This is not your fault. I always knew that I would die for my boy. You're the best thing that has happened to me in this miserable life. Those men are just plain evil." Tears just streamed down my face. "Miss Devine! Mama! Please don't go dying on me." Miss Devine shushed me. "Listen to me, boy. You need to run and not look back. These men mean to do harm to you. Do you understand me?" I don't know why, but I thought of that gun I'd hid in the saloon wall. Don't worry, Miss Devine. I'm gonna run, but first I need to kill those men for what they've done. Miss Devine reacted with all of her energy and then winced in pain. You're not gonna do no such thing, Chance. You can't live your life filled with hate. That is how I lived my life all the way up until there was you. You showed me the joy in life and made it all worthwhile. The tears were really flowing down my face now. I put my head down on Miss Devine's chest area. I didn't care that I was putting my head into an already bloodied area. I hugged Miss Devine as tender as I could. I then sat up and looked into her eyes. She could see that I had blood on the side of my face. Miss Devine looked back at me and gave her last motherly, endearing instruction. Why, Chance Walker, you are just a mess. You need a good scrubbing, a scrubbing only a mother can give. She caressed the side of my face with her hand. Miss Devine then let out a gasp, and that was it. Her eyes were wide open, just staring at me, and her hand slid off my face onto my leg. I don't know why, but I knew she was gone. At that moment, all of the tears that I had dried up. I could only feel anger, hate in my heart for those men. I sat for a second looking at Miss Devine, and then leaned and gave Miss Devine a last kiss on her cheek. I felt so cold inside, like I had nothing left to live for. I got up and walked toward the brothel door. I don't even remember those 10 steps. All I could think was the coldness that I had in my heart. I walked down the stairs one slow step at a time. I made the turn halfway down the stairs, and I was staring straight into the devil's eyes. There was Paxton standing at the bottom of the stairs. Paxton looked at my face and then upstairs at the brothel. Paxton looked at me. Oh, Guttersnipe, just what in the hell have you done? I know I should have cared that he was saying that to me, but I didn't. I just looked at Paxton with death in my eyes. Paxton walked up the stairs, pushing past me towards the brothel door. He took a few steps in and immediately came right back out. Paxton ran down the stairs and pushed right past me. He was yelling for his daddy. "Paul, the Guttersnipe killed Miss Devine! The Guttersnipe killed Miss Devine!" I was so numb that I didn't even care what he was saying. I know I should have been running at this point, but my heart was just feeling dead. Paxton ran around the front toward the saloon door. "Have any of you men seen my pa?" I could then hear Paxton going on and on, making no sense. Mr. West said, "Paxton, slow down. I can't make sense of nothing you're saying." I could then hear Paxton trying to catch his breath. In a labored fashion, Paxton started to tell his pa that me, the Guttersnipe, had done something real bad, that I had killed Miss Devine. "Why would you say something like that, boy?" "I know he did, Daddy. I saw him coming out of Miss Devine's room with blood all over his face. I went and checked on her, and she's dead as could be." Mr. West paused and then let out a sinister laugh. "Oh, this is just perfect. Good work, son. I want you to run over and fetch the sheriff." "Where did you say you saw the Guttersnipe?" "Right around the corner, Pa." Paxton took off running toward the sheriff's office, and Mr. West walked around the corner, blocking any exit that I might have had. "Oh, Guttersnipe, you've gone and done it now." I didn't answer. I just stood and stared with hate in my eyes. The sheriff came running around the corner. "Mr. West, what's going on?" "Well, it seems that our town thief is a murderer too." Mr. West then winked at the sheriff. Chance had blood all over his face. I think the sheriff, as evil as he was, wasn't even comfortable with this. "Mr. West, now, you know even a boy can be hung for something like this." With an absolutely evil look on his face, Mr. West responded, "As well as that boy should be hung. After all, Sheriff, he is a murdering sumbitch." I would hate to think that I'm paying you, and you're hesitating to do your job. Mr. West tapped on the handle of his gun to reinforce the meaning of his statement. Now take that boy into custody, Sheriff. The sheriff walked over and grabbed my arm. He even looked down at me with some apprehension. Mr. West looked at us with approval and some satisfaction. I think he was feeling the pride that with no plan, he had just done away with the murder of Miss Devine. Sheriff, I'll deal with that boy later. I just remembered that I left a whiskey on the bar, and I hate to see anything go to waste. The sheriff took me back to the jail cell, and I laid on the same old cot I always did. I just closed my eyes, and it wasn't long, and I was sound asleep. I could feel the cot shaking. Wake up, Guttersnipe. I was in a complete fog, having just been woken up. I was trying to focus on all the jostling around. The jail was still dark. I must have slept for the remainder of the day into the night. I was starting to realize that my midnight intruder was the sheriff. Get up, boy. The sheriff shook me again. I sat up on the end of the cot, still cold as ice. Get up, boy. We're leaving. Leaving? Where? I'm just fine laying on this cot. The sheriff grabbed my arm and yanked me off the cot. Get up, Guttersnipe. You may be a mangy dog, but I'm not having the hanging of a boy on my soul, no matter what Mr. West says. The sheriff walked me out of the jail, and his horse was already saddled up outside. The sheriff grabbed my waist and practically threw me up on the back of the horse. He untied the reins and put his foot in the stirrup, slinging his foot over to the other side. We were already moving before he had even settled. The sheriff gave a swift kick and the horse went straight into a gallop. We rode south out of town into the middle of nowhere. After we rode for about an hour, I finally said to the sheriff, So what? I guess you're gonna take me to the middle of nowhere to leave me to die? Sheriff wasn't much for words, but gave a no response answer. Nope. Oh, so then you're gonna kill me and leave me out there? The sheriff offered no answer at all and just kept riding into the hills. After what seemed like a full day's ride, we finally came upon an old farm, or maybe it was more of a ranch. At first observation, it seemed to be abandoned. As we moved closer, I could see that there were walls around the main house to protect it, and a main gate that one would have to enter through. As we trotted into the gate area, the sheriff whistled loudly and said, It's me! At first nothing happened, and then slowly the front door opened. A tall boy about 6 foot came out of the front door, had a gun in his hand and one in his holster in the dead center. The boy looked at the sheriff and then at me. The sheriff smiled at the boy, and then the gruff-looking young man smiled back at the sheriff. Who's the young'un? Asked the boy. Just another guttersnipe. The sheriff stopped and the boy walked up to the side of the horse, reaching for my waist to hoist me down off the horse. I leaned over and slid down with assistance onto the ground. I took one step and fell down to my knees because I was so saddle sore from riding all day. I stood back up and rubbed my hind end a bit, but it didn't help because I was just a bit raw. The boy said to the sheriff, You got here just in time. I just put some victuals on the fire and they're almost ready for eating. The sheriff jumped off his horse and walked toward the front door. Welcome, Guttersnipe. I was feeling like a bit of a smarty pants. Oh, you're gonna fatten me up before you kill me, Sheriff? The older boy just laughed. Come inside and put something in your stomach. Nobody's gonna be killing nobody tonight. I walked in and a nice fire was burning. You could smell the rabbit cooking on the fire, and something else was boiling in the kettle pot. The sheriff walked to the nearest chair and sat down, throwing his feet up on another. The young man was busy putting some plates together for us. He walked over and handed the first one to the sheriff, and then soon after handed one to me. I was starving. I must admit, everything on the plate smelled wonderful. I immediately dug in, and it was wonderful. I couldn't help it. Boy, this is some delightful eating. Why, thank you, young man. Do you have a name? Well, my name isn't Guttersnipe, I'll tell you that much. My name is Chance. Chance Walker. You Ben Walker's boy? I paused for a second. And how would you know that? The older boy looked at the sheriff and quickly said, I'm guessing you haven't told him yet? The sheriff looked away as if to avoid the subject. I'll take that as a no. Well, he may not have told you what's happening here, but I will. No, the sheriff butted into the conversation. I'll tell him. While you're at it, are you going to tell him you murdered Mr. Vine? The boy jerked his head over and looked at the sheriff. Mr. West did all the killing, not me. I became angry. Yes, you did, and I heard the 2 shots. First, Mr. Vine fired her gun, and then you 2 cut her down. That's not true, Guttersnipe. I never fired my pistol, and all 3 shots were Mr. West. Mr. Vine did pull her pistol, but Mr. West was too fast on the draw. He hit her with the first shot, but she was still standing, so he shot twice more to finish the deed. Well, you might as well been the shooter. You were there, and you just stood by watching him do it. In fact, you didn't even stick around to watch her die. There's a reason for that. All I can tell you, Chance, at this time, is that I too cared about Miss Devine. The boy jumped up. He was obviously very upset. I'm going to bed. He made a straight line for the cot, and I never saw him for the rest of the night. The sheriff, after that, just sat looking off in a daze. He almost looked sad. I grabbed 2 blankets and curled up on the floor. I slept next to the fire. This was like heaven for me, considering that I'd always slept on the ground outside, freezing my keister off.